Hello everyone, Neve here, and today we are doing my magical month of November, going over all the tarot decks and oracle decks I used in November, and just a general sort of chat of how November went. So in front of me, of course, I have my two spiritual journals. This is my daily slash nightly tarot journal, and this is like the bigger readings that I do, rituals, things like that. Both of these are mostly tarot based, but yeah. Anyway, so before I really get into this, I kind of wanted to briefly talk about the big test that I had. So I have talked about this a lot over the past several months. Basically, I had a big test yesterday. It was the JLPT, that's the Japanese Language Proficiency Test, and it is an international test that is done about twice a year in most countries, but here in the United States, it's only done in December. It's like the first Sunday of December, I think. So I signed up for that. And there's 5 different levels. The lowest is N5, and it goes up to N1. And it's basically it's gauging your proficiency of the Japanese language, of course. And it is they are actual certificates. So they're something you can put on your resume, and for various jobs that might require a certain level of a Japanese language proficiency. So and I took the N5. That's the lowest test. I've been studying Japanese for 2 years. There were some people that said I could have tried to go for the N4, but I kind of just wanted to start small and go with the lowest test. And it's still incredibly difficult. Believe me, it is very, very difficult. Even for me, who's been studying for 2 years, it was very difficult. So I will briefly talk about that. And if I remember, I'll put a skip. I'll section out the video in the put the chapters in, or whatever it's called. But it's the one that I went to was in Vermont. They also had one closer to me in Boston. However, when I went to go sign up, I assumed I would choose the Boston one, and because Boston's about an hour away from us. But that filled up within minutes of registration opening. Like, registration opened in, I think, August, and within minutes, the Boston one was filled up. So I was kind of distraught, because I was like, oh no, what, like, I had really banked on me doing the JLPT this year, so I was really bummed. But then this year, the Vermont location had just opened up, and it was at Middlebury College in Vermont, and that is about a 3-hour drive for us. So it's quite a bit further away, but it's not going to fill up as quickly as, say, the Boston one. And I took about a day to consider, and because I wasn't sure if my husband would be able to drive me up there. I don't drive, so or if I would have to figure out some other form of transportation. But ultimately, I decided to go ahead and do the Vermont one. So, and my husband was like, "Of course, I'm going to drive you. We'll make a weekend of it," and it was awesome. I was a nervous wreck going up there, because basically all of November I was heavily studying for this exam, and heavily studying for it. I did tons and tons of mock tests, so I knew exactly how the test was laid out. There's 3 different sections. The first section is vocabulary and kind of your knowledge on kanji readings. The second section is grammar and like reading comprehension. And then the third section is listening. So I knew how the test was laid out and the general way, like what kinds of questions I would come across. So I really focused on that a lot during the month of November so that I was as prepared as I could possibly be. But I was a nervous wreck on the whole ride to Vermont. I did another practice test in the car, and I had been averaging about like 75% on these practice tests. Sometimes I got as high as about an 87, and sometimes I got pretty low. I mean, there was one test that I took that I actually failed the test, which is a big bummer. But most of them were 70 and above. There was like 2 that I took that were like in the 60s. But yeah, in general, and I was passing these tests and pretty well because what's required is actually a pretty low amount to pass. So yeah. Anyway, so I took the practice test in the car, and then we got to the hotel, and we went to a restaurant that night to kind of relax my nerves, have something nice, and it was a really, really good restaurant. It was called Two Brothers Tavern in Middlebury, Vermont, of course. So if you're ever in that area, that is an amazing, amazing restaurant. We ordered the mussels, the PEI mussels for our appetizer, and I swear these were the best mussels I've ever had in my life. So and the prices were very, very reasonable too. It was not overly expensive. So yeah, I cannot recommend that restaurant enough. Anyway, and then that night I did more studying, and I went to bed just absolutely nervous as hell. And didn't sleep all that great. I mean, I did sleep, but I think there were multiple points that I kind of woke up and just had like little panic moments. And then we actually woke up at like 5 o'clock, which is kind of early, but we woke up at 5, and I took another practice test that morning and did pretty well on it. And then the test happened. I had to arrive at about 12:30, right after lunch, and it was it was a bit nerve-wracking because one of the in the pamphlet it says if your bag makes any sort of noise, like your phone or whatever, like any beeps, any noises come from your bag, you're immediately disqualified and escorted out and things like that. And I was so worried about that, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave my phone in the car with my husband, and I don't so I don't have to worry about that, And even still, I still worried that my bag was going to make a noise, even though there was no electronics in it. But I should have brought my phone with me because I forgot what room I was supposed to be in, which is in the pamphlet on my phone. And so I had to ask someone else, and luckily she was actually in the same classroom as me. So I was like, oh great, I'll just follow you then. And and it also would have been nice to have my phone on me to check the time during the breaks in between the test sections. Because I didn't have my phone, so I didn't know what time it was. But anyway, the test itself. So the first section, the vocab and kanji section, I breezed through. Oh my god, it was so easy. And I finished, they allotted 20 minutes for the test, and I finished that first section in 5 minutes. And I was by far the first person to finish that test. And I was feeling real confident. And I had so much time that I went through the test a couple times to make sure I agreed with all my answers. And I still had a good nearly 15 minutes left of the test, or left of the time. And so I just kind of sat there and meditated a little bit, and that was it. And then we had a 15-minute break, and then when we came back, was the second part of the test. And this one was a bit more humbling because with the first one I did so, like, it was so easy that I was like, maybe I should have done the N4, you know? And then the second part, the grammar and the reading comprehension, and I knew this was going to be more difficult. I probably got about a 70% on it. I don't know yet. I'm not going to know the results of this until like February. Yeah, so that one, I definitely passed the second portion, but it was definitely more humbling. So I was like, okay, maybe I wouldn't have done so well on an N4 test. But and then we had another 15-minute break. And when we came back was the listening portion, and I was dreading this because this was the toughest part for me. And there were other, like, I think most of the other people in the classroom felt the same way. They were also worried about the listening portion because it's very difficult. They basically put in a CD, and the CD lasts half an hour, and that's how much time you get for the test. And once the CD's over, that's it. So they play each sound clip just once, and you got to answer questions about it. And it's just like, you know, and the entire test is multiple choice, which is nice. But like, with the first two questions, there was no need whatsoever for me to guess on any of them. But the third section, the listening section, there were some that I answered right away. I knew what it was asking, and I answered right away. There were others that I wasn't sure, but I picked what I thought might be right. But there's a giant question mark on it because I'm not sure. And then there was a section of questions that I honestly, like, I had to basically guess, and there were a few of them that I just guessed on. So yeah, I am not at all confident about the third part of that test. The first two parts, absolutely confident. The third part, not confident at all. I hope I passed. And in order to pass the entire test, you do have to pass each section. So I passed the first section with flying colors. I know that for sure. Like, I may have gotten a couple wrong because there were a couple that I wasn't completely sure about. I picked what I thought was the best answer, but I could very well be wrong. But I also wouldn't be surprised if I got every question in the first section correct. And then the second section, like I said, I think I probably got about a 70, you know, like I got about 7 out of every 10 correct, probably. So, yeah, so I'm confident with that one. But the third one, I have no idea. I don't know how I did on that. It was so difficult. So if I fail the test, it's going to be because of the listening section, but I really, really hope I passed. All right, with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about my month of tarot. All right, so the month of November was dedicated to the Irish goddess on Morrigan. Let me open the month page for this. Here we go. And I really don't fill out this very much. I want to try to use the monthly pages more next year, but yeah, I just this year I just hardly used it. I tried to in the beginning, tried to do certain things in the beginning, but it wasn't really sticking. I wasn't really sticking with it. So yeah, so this month was dedicated to on Morrigan, and the big reason is because Samhain. I associate Samhain with on Morrigan, and Samhain is the Irish word for November. So I think of November as Samhain month. I don't really think of October as Samhain month. Spooky season, sure, but October actually has more of a general Libra vibe for me, and I am a Libra, but yeah, and that Scorpio feeling heading into Samhain doesn't start to feel strong for me until Halloween and and that Samhain season, November. So yeah, and I was supposed to read the Book of the Great Queen, which I'm looking over at my bookshelf, and I think I think I placed that somewhere. I'm not sure where I placed it, but I can't see it on my bookshelf right now. But I was supposed to read that, and I did. I've read more than half of it at like a year or two ago, and so I was trying to read the rest of it. But honestly, I didn't crack that open at all this month. I ended up reading a bit of my manga at night, and my manga that's in Japanese, and I'm actually reading Chainsaw Man, the first one, in Japanese, and that's been at my bedside, and I've read, I didn't finish it, but I think I'm getting close to halfway through. It's hard to read, of course, because I'm reading it in Japanese, but so. Yeah, I just, especially with the JLPT looming, I just was not really wanting to read non-Japanese material, and so I didn't get to it. And yeah, it is what it is, but there we go. So let me go to the first section, the opening. Now, I don't have pictures of my reading this month. Again, it's because I didn't have time to create them and print them off. So, and the same is true for the month of October, which I will go through and do that probably in December, but I'm really focusing for December on setting up my next year's journals. So I will eventually print off all the readings for the last 2 months. But yeah, so right now, not open. So the decks that I used. Yeah, so I think do I want to pull out the decks for that, or do I want to pull out my morning no, I'll do that later. Okay. Sorry, I'm just thinking things through right now. So what I used for the opening ritual or opening reading, I used the Bushido Oracle. Very strong warrior vibes here, which I do also kind of associate with Anne Morgan. I know she's a goddess, not a god, but she's a goddess of war, not necessarily of war, but she's a warrior goddess, if that makes sense. I did use the Bushido Oracle, and of course I'm also trying to use a lot of Japanese decks right now, so I'll put this here in the middle. And the deck that I used is, of course, the deck that I have associated and dedicated to Anne Morgan, and that is the Crow Tarot. So let me pull this out real quick, and we can do a little side by side here. All right. All right, here we go, and here we go. And yeah, I liked it. It was I enjoyed using this. I've actually found that I really enjoy this deck. So obviously I don't immediately know the Japanese on here, but the book is in both English and Japanese, so that does help, but it also sort of hinders me a little bit because it's a bit of a crutch, because of course I go straight to the English, but I found, so I have another deck that's, I don't know if it's the same creators, but it's a very similar deck to this, the same size, and I talked about it in my last video that's going over all of my Japanese decks. So I have the Shinwa Oracle and I have the Bushido Oracle, and they're pretty related to each other, but I like the art of the Shinwa one more, but I found that I really enjoy the messages on the Bushido Oracle. Yeah, they're just a little bit more concise, I guess. And of course, right now I don't know exactly what it's saying. And I can come to it and I can ignore a bit the name of the warrior and just focus on the message here. Ari no Mamao. Ari no Mamao. I could do that. Or I can read into who this warrior was, or the legend of this warrior, because some of these are actual warriors, and I think some of them are mythical. So yeah, but in general, I did find that I enjoyed the Bushido Oracle with Anne Morgan, and of course, it worked great with the Crow Tarot. So that was the opening. Now, before I put these away completely, the next reading was the new moon in Scorpio, and I did use a Star Trek tarot with that, which I'm about to pull out, along with the Urban Crow, which I will go over this after the next one, because the next one was a Samhain reading, and I used the Crow Tarot and the Bushido Oracle, and actually the Star Trek Tarot. I just don't have it on here. So I did actually use those two decks again along with the Star Trek Tarot. So I think it makes more sense to just pull out the Star Trek Tarot first, and then here we go, of course, and then move on to the moon reading that was actually before this. So there's actually a video of this reading on my channel. And because of that, I hadn't actually filled out the reading yet in the book. I decorated it, but I hadn't filled it out yet. So this is, of course, a Star Trek Tarot. There's a video of this reading that I did on my channel. It was the my video about the election and processing the election. My mind was very much on that at the time, and it was you know, I mean, you can go watch that video, and I'm obviously very distressed in it, and I mean, it was an awful election, and it is not the kind of, I don't know, outcome that I would have hoped for. But yeah, and that video was mostly me processing the election and being very angry and having a lot of emotions, and yeah, and then following that was my Samhain ritual / reading, and it was a reading for the collective, so go check that out, and it was obviously focused on the election, and I picked originally I was just going to do the Crow Tarot with the Bushido, but there was, like, I don't know, I felt like I needed that Star Trek vibe. I needed the energy of this here, and the Star Trek Tarot is actually a deck that I actually really enjoy using when I do readings with On Morrigan. So I wouldn't say it's totally connected to her, but I would say that she definitely approves of my Star Trek Tarot. And here we go with this card here. Yeah. So I don't know, the political nature of Star Trek just called to me for that Samhain ritual reading. So yeah, so that's what I went with. So I'm going to put these two decks away, and we'll talk about the Star Trek Tarot with the Urban Crow. Yeah. Okay, so going back a page, for the first of all the moon readings, this was the new moon in Scorpio. So with these readings, my monthly moon readings, I do 4 a month for the full, new, and the 2 other quarter moons. Yeah, and I use the same Oracle deck for the whole month for all 4 readings, but I switch out the tarot decks. So this month for the moon readings, I use the Urban Crow, and here's the box for it here. I don't have a bag for this one yet. Hopefully in 2025, I will make a bag for this. And this is actually probably one of my favorite Oracle decks because it's nice and concise and simple. The keywords on it are fantastic. Oh, look, the Gorn card. Yeah, and it's territory with the Ace of Rods, which, you know, very territorial here. And then the Savage Curtain, the 5 of Rods. That's actually pretty cool. Yeah, and like this deck just goes well with so many other decks. And it just, I don't know, it's the keywords on it are really, really good. Yeah. I'm a big fan of this one. And I thought, of course, it went well with the Star Trek Tarot. No complaints on it whatsoever. And yeah, so I won't stick on this for too long, but there we go. So that was the new moon in Scorpio. So next up was the first quarter moon in Aquarius, and I used the Mars Power Tarot with this, which I quite liked. So I've been, of course, using the Mars Power quite frequently with my Ryujin Kado, that's the Dragon God cards, one of my Japanese decks, because I'm doing a full deep dive study of the Dragon Gods cards, and that deck and this deck are kind of married in my collection, so I use them together quite frequently, but sometimes I like to use the decks separately as well. So this for this moon, and this week in my nightly readings, I use the Mars Power. So one of the things that I do, that I've been doing for the past couple months, whatever deck that I use for a moon reading is the deck I use that week in my nightly readings. This Mars Power, I think it was, no, it wasn't this one. I think this was the Mars Power, yeah. Which, of course I'll get to that in a moment. But, yeah, so I really enjoyed this. It was fantastic. I don't know what else to say about this. I think I'll talk about the Mars Power a bit more when I go over the weekly. So, yeah. So next up was the full moon in Taurus, and I used my favorite deck, my all-time favorite deck. Not necessarily my favorite deck this month. We'll see. We'll get to the tarot tournament at the end. But my overall favorite deck, and that is the Anna K Tarot. This is my own personal deck. This is what I use for my own personal readings. Like, I don't use the Anna K for anyone else. I don't know, I don't really like the term soul deck, but based on how people use that term, I would say that this deck definitely fits the bill for that for me. It's my soul deck. So it's I kind of think of it as my own personal, like, therapy deck. It's a friend to me, but it's very real for me, if that makes sense. Like, the messages that I get from the Anna K are very, very real, and, like, tell it like it is. I sort of feel like it does sort of call me out, but it does it in a way that it feels like a trusted friend. You know what I mean? Where, yeah, it taps into a certain point of my psyche that I can't quite articulate well, but there's something about the Anna K that I really, really connect with, and of course it went very well with the Urban Crow. All right, so that was the Anna K, and that was the full moon ritual reading. And I also did a spell on the full moon, which is also on my channel, and it was a spell for for my test, and to help me retain and everything that I've studied for the test. And I have no doubt that, like I said, the first two sections I passed. It's that third section that I'm not certain on, but hopefully my spell helped with that. So that was the full moon. So the final full moon, or not full moon, the final moon reading was the third quarter moon in Leo, and I used the Murder of Crows. And again, I don't have a bag for this one. I don't think I'll ever make a bag for this, because the box that it came in is quite large, and I do really, really like it. So I think this one just sort of lives in the box that it came in, and I don't think I'll ever make a bag for this one. And these cards are gigantic. Like, for me, they're gigantic. They're almost oracle size. They're certainly, like, they're even taller than this oracle. Yeah, they're taller than that for sure. By a good, like, more than half a centimeter, maybe 3/4 of a centimeter. They're quite tall cards. They're not quite wide enough like an oracle, but they're definitely oracle size. So this is probably my largest tarot deck for sure, and it's also my spookiest or darkest, most macabre tarot deck. I don't really have a lot of those sorts of decks in my collection. This is kind of the only one. I do have, I think it's the Horror Tarot on my wish list. And I like that one because it kind of makes me think of Castlevania, like, and I was turned on to that deck by Don Michelle because she calls it her Castlevania deck, and I love Castlevania. And when I checked that out, I was like, oh my god, you're so right. This deck really makes me think of Castlevania, and I do really like fandom decks in general. And that one's not a fandom deck, but it kind of feels like one, you know. So so that's the only other like kind of macabre deck that I sort of had on my list. I don't really collect macabre sort of stuff. It's not like it bothers me in any sort of way. So like one example is like the Patrick Valenza decks. I actually love his artwork, and I love his Oracle decks and the non-tarot decks, but I'm really not interested in any of his tarot decks. And like, I feel like I want to be, but I'm just not, and which is fine, of course. But I love his non-tarot decks, like the other Oracle decks. So like, you know, and I have the Mildred Payne Secret Pocket Oracle, the small one, and I absolutely love that deck. It doesn't feel macabre to me, but you know, some of the cards are a little bit spooky, but in general, yeah. But a lot of his other decks I am still really interested in. But yeah, anyway, I'm chatting about all sorts of other decks, and besides the Murder of Crows here. And I do love this deck. I kind of associate it with the Irish Goddess Bive, which is one of the Morgans, Namarina. I sort of associate it with Bive, and I don't do a lot of readings with Bive, but if / when I do, it would probably be with this deck. Yeah. So, and of course, it looked great with the Urban Crow. So yeah, that was the third quarter moon. So for the final reading of this month is the Morgan closing reading, which I actually did today. I'm filming this on December 2nd. So normally I would have done the closing reading on the last day of the month. But because of the, you know, JLPT and all of that, I had to wait until I came home and do that the day after. So I did the closing ritual for on Morgan right before this reading, and then right after that I did the opening reading for my December deity, which is the Kalyak. And yeah, so, and of course I don't have the cards in here yet, the pictures of the cards, but yeah, so basically what I do for my closing readings this year anyway is the 4 oracle cards that I used for each of the moons. I pulled that card out, so I specifically look for that card, and actually one of them was community, but I just have these in piles right now as an example. And then I pull out a deck and pull out a card for each of those cards to represent what that deity wanted to tell me with that card. I don't know if that made sense at all. So, for example, let me just go in here. So the cards for this month from the Urban Crow that I pulled out was Distance, then it was Community, Caching, and Gifts. Those were the 4 oracle cards. And then I pulled a card from the Urban Crow, which of course matches really well with the Crow Tarot. It matches very well with the Urban Crow. I constantly call this deck the Urban Crow, even though it's the Crow Tarot. I don't know why. But of course they match very well because they're both MJ Cullinans, they're both Crow decks. Yeah. So I just laid this out as an example, and I love the way these 2 decks look together, and yeah, so that was it for those. So for my daily readings, which are done at night, the Oracle deck that I used all month for my daily readings was the Morgan Oracle cards, which I don't have a bag for. It's a very cute little small deck, and I didn't know how to show this, but I kind of like a couple months ago, I used to, okay, let me backtrack a bit. My Oracle deck that I that I record in the monthly section of my journal here used to be a morning pull, but I am terrible at morning pulls, so frequently I didn't do it. So I got kind of tired of that, and around like I want to say August, September or so, and I stopped decorating my pages. I decided to move the oracle reading at night, and because of that, I started using it with my nightly tarot readings. So it kind of added a flavor to the reading itself, which I quite liked, and I kept up with that, and I still did that for this month, for November. And this is a really good deck. I hardly ever use it. I want to use it more, and I'm really glad I really used it this month, because I think I sort of found a new understanding of these cards and a connection to these cards. It's very, very good, and it actually matched almost every single one of the decks very well, which, you know, if I had thought about it, I would have kept this deck out along with the Urban Crow and just sort of shown how they all match together. But yeah, I didn't pull it out until now. So yeah, it was it's a very dark deck though. Like, I felt like I kept pulling more of the more troubling cards, or the more difficult cards. Like, for example, the card I pulled last night, which was actually December 1st, but I hadn't switched out my decks yet. The card I pulled out was Failure, which I was like, getting that card on the day that I did my big tests is awesome. But you know, I sort of read into it. I didn't read into it like I failed the test. I read into it that I went into this day with a lot of fear of failure. So that's kind of how I read it. Maybe it's reading it in a lighter way. I don't know. Maybe she was straight up telling me that I failed the test. I don't know. We'll find out in February. February-ish. But yeah, so it is a really, really good deck though, and I do want to use it more frequently from now on. So that is the Morrigan Oracle, and that was the deck that I used as my Oracle this month. So the weekly pages, I was doing a little better at doing my readings. I think, what deck did I use with this? I think this was the Star Trek Tarot. Yes, this was the Star Trek Tarot, and I did 5 out of the 7 days. Really good. This was the Mars Power. I did 4 out of 7 days. And then this was the Anna K, and I did 3 out of the 7 pages. 5, 4, 3. And now this one, there's nothing on here, but I actually did at least 3 days. It's just I didn't have time to decorate this, so I just took pictures of the readings that I did, and I did 3 readings, and I decorated this morning, and I will go through and fill out the days that I did here. And I used the Murder of Crows with that one. And now we're on this week for December. All right. So that was everything in there. Now let's do the tarot tournament. And here is all the decks that I used in November. I never filled out October, and I never filled out August, but all the other months I filled out all the decks that I used. So, yeah. So, all right. So those were the decks I used. Let's go to the tarot tournament. All right, here we are. Oh, I don't have a pen on me. Okay, here we are. I had to go find a pen. Yeah, so while I did use my all-time favorite deck this month, I gotta say that I think this month my favorite deck was the Star Trek Tarot. Yeah, so I'm gonna put that in November here. Star Trek Tarot? Yeah, it for sure was my favorite deck this month. But I actually kind of liked all of the decks. Like, there wasn't any decks that I felt like wasn't that I wasn't connecting to this month. They all sort of had a role to play, and I think I just found the energy of the Star Trek deck, with its political nature of Star Trek. I felt that was the most relevant, and it was an energy I needed, and so yeah, I think it's definitely that. If we were doing a Oracle tournament, which maybe I'll do next year, I don't know. I think it would have been the Bushido Oracle. I really liked that one this month. So now we are doing what was this month that, I think this was May and November. So choosing between Cosmovisions and Star Trek Tarot. That's kind of funny. They're both kind of cosmic. But yeah, I think the winner here is Star Trek Tarot. So Star Trek Tarot. All right. Yeah, so we got one more month to go, and then we'll fill out that one, and then we'll do the 3 there and final one there. So that will be in the January video. That video will be in January, and it'll be the My Magical Month of December. So yeah, so what are my plans for this month? I'm not gonna read a book on Kalyak. I was going to, but I don't, like, I'd have to buy it, and I don't want to buy a book right now. So I actually think I am going to continue reading my manga at night. Even though, for the most part, studying Japanese is extremely low this month for me. I kind of, I didn't want to look at Japanese for a little while, after my test there. I still do Duolingo and things like that, but I'm taking a big study break for December. But I still will be doing Duolingo. I'll still probably be popping in on WaniKani, which is a kanji program that I use, and I'll be reading my manga at night. So that's the plan for that. I'm going to be doing a lot of kind of crafting sort of stuff this month, specifically setting up my journals and things like that for 2025. There will be a video going up this month, going over whatever I have printed off and ready to create for my 2025 spiritual journal. I'll have a video of that sometime this month. It won't be complete, but I'll get as much as I can done in that video. Yeah, and then we got Yule coming up, so, and my mom's gonna come visit, so, yeah, all right. I hope you guys all have a great December, and I will talk to you later. Bye!